So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this final timeout special with Sarah Leiter. Obviously, thank you for joining us tonight, Sarah.
Hello, everybody.
Like we said earlier, if you do have any questions, please do obviously put them in the chat box, and one of my trusty assistants will get back to you and get the questions into the room. So if we could just start, we'll go over a bit of personal information, if that's okay. So, how old are you, Sarah? If that's allowed.
Just about. I'm 30.
Okay, and if we could just go into talk a little bit about your eye condition, if that's okay.
Yeah. So I was born with albinism, which means I've got lovely white blonde hair and really pale skin. It also means that my eyes aren't properly developed. So I'm classified as a B3 and just generally kind of acuity things where I can see just less of everything, less detail. I always describe my eyes as everybody's normal eyes are like an ultra HD 4K TV, and my eyes are stuck in the 1960s color television.
Excellent. And so now this is probably a bit of a tough question, and probably one if we can make sure that Aaron Ford isn't listening. But what would your preferred position be?
It is a really tough question because for me it really depends on the context, and I love playing goalball, and I think that each position has its own kind of advantages and disadvantages. So depending on the situation, sometimes I love to be the center and to be kind of being the strategic person on court and doing all the defending. And there are other times when I actually also really enjoy being on the wing and just concentrating a lot more on executing shots and potentially scoring some goals. So yeah, it just really depends on the situation.
Excellent. And so we'll kind of go over the current clubs at the moment and obviously where you play. But I think what would be good to do is kind of go right back to the start. So a little birdie tells me it started all around London 2012. Do you want to tell me a little bit about how you obviously first saw goalball, kind of and kind of that progress within them first couple of weeks of obviously what was a major event within the UK?
Yeah, so my parents and I went to some of the Olympic Games. We watched some of the gymnastics live, and we had just an amazing time. And then I went back home to Germany, where I was living at the time, and I did watch some of the Paralympics, and it was really, for me, the first time that I think I was old enough, I was mature enough to realize that maybe mainstream sport had never worked for me. I tried various things, but I was just never good enough to even compete at the lowest level. So watching the Paralympics on television just gave me that realization that actually you don't have to try and fit into a mainstream sport, but playing a para sport is as valuable and as good. And I was familiar with blind football, so I kind of Googled blind football Cambridge. I still didn't, I kind of knew goalball existed, but it wasn't really of interest. But so I Googled blind football Cambridge and came across Warren Wilson's name. Lots of you will know Warren. He's a very enthusiastic goalballer here in Cambridge. So he replied in classic Warren style with an email that was about 3 pages long, telling me all about how the blind football unfortunately hadn't quite worked out because they never managed to get enough people, but how there was this goalball team, and really goalball was the most amazing sport, and I should just come and give it a go. So a couple of weeks later, at the end of September, I did give it a go. I went to Cherry Hinton, which is sort of like a village at the outskirts of the town, and just played for the first time, and I immediately fell in love. I'd never met any of these people before, but the community was fantastic. We went to the pub afterwards. They were just all really lovely. And also the sport was just really intriguing. I'd never done anything blindfolded before. And then just actually, my eyesight just didn't matter. And it was just get on with the sport.
No, excellent, excellent. To be fair, on my notes that I've wrote down, I've put Goalball, Cambridge, Warren Wilson, and a big question mark. Yeah. And I think, and like you say, I think that just looking at that there and how much over the space of a couple of months and from such a major sporting event, and obviously that journey has started. Now, I briefly mentioned this to Sarah on just before we joined and let everyone in, but I've done some historian digging through the archives, and I found obviously Sarah's stats from her first competition, which was back in December 2012. So good 8 years, probably coming up to 8 years ago. And Sarah, do you want to have a guess of how many goals you scored on that day?
I can't remember scoring any, to be fair. All I remember is that we finished 11th out of 12, and that Dina was there because we had a dead tie in our pool, which meant two teams had to do a golden goal shootout to decide who was allowed to move into the final. That's all I remember.
Well, to be fair, Sarah, it's better than 0. It was 2. So I think that's really good. So obviously Cambridge obviously started kind of December 2012. So kind of let's kind of move on to kind of GB side of it, and obviously because that from obviously conversations we've had previously and things that you've mentioned, you kind of started in GB really quickly. So from your first tournament, which was December 2012, when was kind of your first involvement with GB?
So I went to Talent ID Day, I think in March. There was a massive snowstorm, so it had been postponed to a different weekend. And then in late April, I found myself in Hereford at the GB training camp. And in May, like 2 weeks later, I was on a plane to Poland. And I didn't even really know the rules. Like, I had no clue what was going on half the time. Yeah.
And on here I've got, obviously, it's kind of, I think it's a big thanks to a certain Alex Bunny for the first invitation, which I've got down as March 2013.
Yeah. He sent Warren an email and invited me along. He said, the tall blonde girl, I think her name might be Sarah.
Brilliant. Yeah, and obviously, so kind of that first obviously invitational tournament and the first session, kind of talk me through like feelings, thoughts. What did you think travelling all the way up to obviously the Lighthouse in Birmingham? What was then thoughts travelling up there?
I think for the Talent ID Day, I just thought, it was an interesting way of learning more about goalball. I didn't really have many ambitions. Like, I just sort of only like a few weeks beforehand I learned that you're allowed to move on court. Like, as I say, I was just still really learning the basics and the rules. So I just wanted to learn more about goalball and understand more. And went up there really kind of almost with Warren and with another girl called Lisa, who was part of the club at the time, just to learn more about goalball. So it was just really for fun. I didn't really have high expectations out of it. So, if I'd never been picked, I don't think I would have been disappointed. But yeah, it was my first chance of seeing much higher level goalball. Like, they did some elite level stuff with some of the men, and I was kind of like, oh my goodness, this is goalball.
Yeah. No, excellent. And kind of, we've got a question from the floor, kind of what, from a like a pre-submitted question. It's kind of something you've probably already answered, but kind of where and when did you make your debut? So your official GB debut.
Yeah, so it was in Poland in 2013. I can't remember the name of the place, but it was a sort of little tournament, and it was us, Russia, Ukraine, and somebody else. And it was a really rough tournament for us, I think, we were all an entirely development squad, so we didn't have any of the experienced players with us. So it was certainly a very steep learning curve when you're playing against some of the Russians who are, known for their shots and, I hardly knew the rules, but it was great. I loved it. I loved learning more about goalball. I think that was for me the most intriguing thing. And I remember Dina was our coach at the time, and she sat us all down at the end of the first tournament and said, you know, what do you remember most, or what surprised you most? And I was like, I'm used to sitting 3.5-hour exams, but my brain was completely wiped out. It's the concentration you need to keep on court in a 24-minute game that was a massive surprise to me. And like all the tactics and all these pieces of information around me. And I was like, whoa, Goalball was so simple back at novice level Cambridge training.
Yeah, definitely. So kind of, but what I don't think some people may be aware of, and I wasn't until, and obviously I've only been at Goalball UK coming up to 2.5 years now, and I never realised this, but you were obviously you're an Austrian national.
Yes.
So how did that kind of go? I know from when we had a conversation about it, and I found out, I thought it was brilliant and something that I think it'd be great to share.
Yeah, so my family are Austrian. So obviously I was born an Austrian citizen. And so I went to that tournament in Poland kind of because somebody else had dropped out and therefore there was a spot available, and I went for it. And afterwards the performance director kind of was like, so Sarah, how do you think about becoming British? And I was like, what? This is all a bit quick. I still don't know half the rules. But yeah, so then I sort of slowly started looking into that and thinking about it. And Austria does not normally allow dual citizenship. So I had to apply to the Austrian authorities to give me permission to even apply for another citizenship. And then I got my British citizenship about a year later. So we're now talking about June, July 2014. And we had our Europeans in September 2014. And the day I got my citizenship application, I went straight to the post office and handed in my passport application. But there was us at the end of August, 2 weeks before the tournament, and I still didn't have a passport. And obviously my citizenship certificate was with the passport office. So I couldn't even prove I was British, which was essential for competing for Great Britain at an international tournament at the Europeans. But then luckily, sort of the week before we flew out, my passport arrived, and there was I think a massive sigh of relief on Aaron as well as me.
Yeah, definitely. And also, obviously, just going back to the stats, you also made in that time, obviously, so you'd had your first experience, gone to Poland, and then also you'd obviously taken part in your first intermediate tournament and your first elite tournament within them. So I've got here that you went to Nottingham in October 2013, so just after you'd come back from Poland for your first intermediate tournament, and then in the June of obviously 2013, 2013. I've made it 2012. June 2013 is obviously then when you made your elite debut, which was obviously at Birmingham. So all in the space of probably a year and a bit, and you made that sudden jump. You made a jump from novice straight to elite, and also you started within GB. So what, as a player, making that big jump, what did you feel like? What was it? A load of emotions all at once that you made that massive jump up?
I think obviously because I was attending a lot of GB training in the middle, so the jump to intermediate felt like totally necessary. Just novice suddenly, obviously it was the way I'd gotten into the sport very quickly. Once I realized the rules and once I learned more and once I developed as a player, novice was no longer exciting. So then going to intermediate was just really natural. I think attending my first elite tournament, I do certainly remember as a little bit terrifying. It was just defending lots of the men's shots. And I think for those people who know me well, I actually nowadays, that's one of the things I enjoy most. I really enjoy the fast-paced game. I love stopping all the quick shots. I I find a slow game is when I get distracted and make a lot more errors. But at the time, I think I was terrified, the first elite tournament. And I think I had a string in that 2014 and then 2015 season, where I think every tournament, somebody would manage to hit me in the face with a shot, and there'd be a medical timeout, and Sarah would have to go off again. Or, that seemed to be a bit of a theme, because I was always happy to put myself in front of the ball, but hadn't quite learned the skills yet.
Yeah, definitely. And to be fair, for budding coaches and anyone listening in, that's obviously a tactic game plan for you. Sarah doesn't like a slow game. She likes a real. But yeah, so obviously within the space of a year, a lot has changed. Obviously, you've managed to get all your passport. Then kind of what kind of then happens after you then got the passport for the Europeans? Obviously, that was is that 2015 in South Korea? Is that the one?
No, so that's 2014 Hungary. Was my first Europeans.
Okay.
It didn't go very well for us. We were hoping to get promoted back to the A-League. We didn't. I think for me, it was really the experience that I learned how much I care about the team and the team's performance. Before then, it was probably a lot more fun. And then suddenly I actually really cared about the outcome. And it was probably my first time, but not my last time, of crying at Goalball. When we lost, I think we lost a quarterfinal. I can't quite remember which game, but we lost a game, and that meant that we could no longer get promoted. And it was really tough, that. So it was quite a big learning curve. But yeah, I did also enjoy it. Like, I loved when we did play, and when we played well, I enjoyed it. But I also just suddenly realized the amount of responsibility each one of us in the team has. And I probably only was on court for about 5 minutes in a whole week.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of the big change, isn't it? And obviously that starting progression of that first major tournament, and then pressures that obviously that kind of you have. So kind of we'll move on to kind of preparations for, which I've now got down as the World Games South Korea in 2015. Yeah. A little bird tells me that you appeared on Eggheads.
Yeah. So,
tell us a bit more.
Yeah, 2015 is not that long ago, but actually Goalball UK has changed a lot since. So we found out that we had the chance to go to the qualifiers, I want to say in December. We went to Hereford, and suddenly we found out that we would be invited to the Paralympic qualifiers, but there was no money. There was no fund available. We didn't know how we were going to get there. We'd have to fly there. We'd have to pay the tournament entry fees and everything else. And even in the run up to it, we had to train and compete. So we figured out lots of interesting ways of fundraising, lots of letter writing to various sort of alumni from my college. Georgie, Laura and I spent a day down at King's College bucket collecting. But yeah, one of the slightly more unusual ideas that Georgie came up with was that we should all enter Eggheads. So by this time, the team had developed this sort of game, which is like Leiter points, whereby if they ask me a question and I don't know the answers, they all score points. So it's kind of like
I've heard a lot of good stories about them, about the Leiter points. Yeah.
Yeah, there is certain rules, like I'm never able to get any points because, I'm like, yeah, that's part of the game. Anyway, so we were all playing this quiz game against me, but then Georgie decided we should try and enter a quiz show. So one weekend, maybe January, I can't even remember, fairly quickly, we flew up to Glasgow. And we were at the BBC there, and we entered Eggheads, and they were amazing. They were so nice to us, and it was, I think for them, it was also really exciting normally to have sort of lots of middle-aged men who enjoy pub quizzes, and to have a group of young girls instead who were there with a, really good reason of why they wanted to win, and what, the money was going to go to good places if we got it. We did I did win my round, which was on science, which is my special interest area. So that was very nice. But then unfortunately, we also lost the final bit on a science related question. So that was really upsetting. But yeah,
Sarah,
it was fun.
you shouldn't have said that. You should have said we won everything. And then unfortunately, we just lost the last round. Like, we weren't just because of a science round, science question. So obviously you managed to raise enough money, which then obviously you obviously got to South Korea. Talk me through the lead up to that around. Obviously your first really big tournament, a big opening ceremony, and kind of that. What we talk to me about that.
So the run up to South Korea was interesting. We'd been going to like a couple of competitions, and then 5 weeks out of the tournament, there was an elite game, and Anna Tipton and I were playing for the same elite team at the time for Cambridge, and Anna tipped over a ball and broke her wrist 5 weeks out of the tournament. And at this point, we were all devastated. There were more tears. And we all thought, this is it. We're never going to go. There's nothing we'll ever, like, we just can't win without Anna. We were heavily relying on her at the time, which meant then there were 2 more tournaments before we were due to fly to South Korea. So suddenly I found myself because Anna's wrist was broken, I was playing all the time. I was suddenly the starting player, and got subbed off at some point to the end. And it was a massive learning curve for me, taking that responsibility again and developing my own skills at international games. Obviously, when we flew to South Korea, luckily, Anna's wrist was sufficiently healed, sort of, that she could play. But we went to the opening ceremony, and I was the flag bearer for the Great British delegation. So that was the football, the judo, and the goalball, and I was the one who took in the flag into the stadium, and that was pretty cool. It was just a really nice thing to be able to do, and yeah, it was just amazing. And then, competition started. It was my first experience of a really long tournament. I think we were there for like 10 days, 1 or 2 games a day. And we did well. We really outperformed all our own expectations, and I think everybody else's expectations. I think we went into the tournament out of the teams attending ranked 13th, and we finished 5th. So it was a huge achievement, and it also meant that we suddenly had a chance of going to the Rio Paralympic Games. And it was just kind of waiting and seeing what would happen in the upcoming months. Out of other competition results would decide whether or not we'd done enough to go to Rio.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Yeah, it's and that experience of carrying the flag in and like you say, walking in the stadium must have just been surreal. And like you say, it's that thing that you'll treasure forever. So let's move. So if we just move, obviously park that there. So let's talk about non-goalball now. We'll jump back into goalball in a short while. Now, away from goalball, what are your interests? Now, I think people that probably already know you already, but you are a doctor. So can you tell us a bit about that? Tell us a bit about your interests. Obviously, day roll outside of goalball, and what do you get up to?
I work as a medical doctor. I want to become a pediatrician to work lots with kids. I just love being around kids and being able to help children improve, their health and improve their families. It just makes a huge, it's really important to me. So that's what I'm hoping to do long term. That kind of keeps me fairly busy. I also do a bit of scientific research on the side. And other things I like to do is I'm involved with my local church. So I will help by reading or wardening, so stewarding people, or just generally, being there, helping out, cleaning up, whatever needs doing. And I also my lockdown hobby, aside from baking, has been I've taken up cross stitch, which is probably a slightly unusual hobby for somebody who's visually impaired. But I have a pair of glasses with a built-in telescope, which I use for certain things in the hospital, which has come in really handy to make large cross-stitch projects.
Absolutely. And let's just go back to baking, because I know this is a personal one of mine. The Great British Bake Off. Now, I'll happily say I watched all of it, and I'm not afraid to say that. Now, did you watch it?
No, I've never seen a single episode.
Oh, Sarah. Oh, well, I thought
there's not much time for television in my life, I tell you.
I thought that'd be something really good.
Sorry.
No, it's all right, don't worry. But now everyone knows that I like Bake Off, so that's a win. So we've just got a question from Sam Goff, and she just says, how do you deal with juggling, goalball, and work at the same time?
Planning, a lot of planning. Luckily, I like timetables, and my calendar is my best friend. So I technically work part-time, which is around about 32, 36 hours a week. As a medical doctor, that's called part-time work. And it's about really being extremely organized. So I would always push Aaron, I'd be prodding him months in advance, going, I need to know exactly which day you want to fly out to this tournament and exactly which day we're coming back. And then I have to sit down with our rota coordinator and go, okay, let's go through this rota. Let's figure out how we're going to make it work. And I've been really lucky that there have been lots of colleagues who, when we went to the US for a tournament, the rota coordinator was like, there's nothing I can do. You just need to find another doctor to cover your shift. And I did, because somebody was willing and happy to swap with me. And then I did a couple of days for them another time. And so actually I've been really lucky that lots of my colleagues have been really supportive in that way to, allow me to make it happen. Yeah, and then I think it's just every week, on a Sunday night, I'd sort of in my head run through, okay, tomorrow I finish at this time. That means I can do that type of training session in the evening, and and also food planning. So, I don't have time much during the week to cook. So it's really about bulk cooking. Usually, on a Sunday night or on a Monday night, I will cook something and eat it 4 days in a row. And I come with the most ridiculous lunchbox. That's what all my colleagues always think. Because I sometimes have in my lunchbox, I'll have lunch, first dinner and second dinner, because if you're going to the gym, you need enough food.
Yeah, and to be fair, when we spoke about this, at what was about a month and a half ago, I think, and we were sat talking. I do remember, I must have seen the biggest lunchbox I've ever seen, and it was quite literally full to the top of literally everything, fruit, salad, everything. If people if I needed something to eat, then Sarah's the person to go to.
Yeah, I also, when I'm tired, I become really picky, so I need to have all the options with me, because I might only want one thing, and otherwise I just skip and don't eat at all, which is not really good while you're training.
Yeah. So I've got now I'm going to have a go at this, Sarah, and apologies if I do get it wrong. So when we were discussing about a doctor stuff as well, Sarah told me about how the different letters that come after her name. So I've got it as, drum roll please, MBBCHIRMAPHD. Now, is that
yes.
Right?
Congratulations.
I think that's 10 out of 10, that. So how hard has that been to achieve and obviously achieve that? What obviously over the last couple of years, especially having an impairment as well. How obviously what difficulties have you had with that?
I guess I'm really lucky in that school always came really easy to me. I was always the geeky kid in class. Academic stuff, as particular the sciences and maths, just was always easy. It was PE, was the subject that I struggled with. I had a D in PE because I couldn't catch a ball to save my life.
You can do that now, though.
Yeah, if I'm blindfolded and the ball has bells in it, that's how it works.
There you go. Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm really lucky in that respect. So I wanted to be a doctor since I was about 11 years old. And when it came to applying for university, there was just no other choice for me. I was going to go to medical school. I think the medical school was probably a little bit apprehensive when they found out they had a visually impaired applicant. And then in particular, when they saw the numbers on my eyesight, they were quite shocked. But credit to them, they were like, okay, you know what? You fulfill all the criteria. It would be discrimination not to let you in. Let's let you in and see what happens. And in terms of that, it's actually worked out really well. They've been supportive of some things, for example, not putting me on a placement in the middle of nowhere that I can't get to because I don't have a car. And then, putting me into hospitals. Some hospitals still have paper records. I can't read anybody else's handwriting. So, just placing me into hospitals which have electronic records. So certain things they have adjusted, but most of the time I just sort of got on with it and it worked quite well. And then halfway through medical school, I took 4 years out to do a PhD, really because I'm a fundamentally nosy person and I've always wanted to know exactly how stuff works. And I was quite frustrated at times as an undergrad when I would go up to the lecturer and ask, but you said this and you said that, but why? And they'd go, we don't know. And I was like, what do you mean we don't know? He's like, no, nobody in the whole world knows. And to me, that was just like, it was a fascinating concept because in school, you always get told there's an answer to everything. And then suddenly you realize that that just really isn't true. But also just kind of like, I really wanted to do research. I really wanted to be the first person to know something, to fight, to really, from first principles, work something new out. And it's just really fascinating. Yeah, and it required a lot of, again, good timetabling. I think actually lots of the things I'd learned on the academic side were really helpful with Goalball. So being really organized means I can get my training done, but it's also really important if you're revising for an exam. Being really determined, like if I can't do something, I will try again and again and again until I figured it out. Like I never take no for an answer, either if somebody else says no, or if I can't yet do something, I will figure out a way of how to do it. And that's both true academically, but also in sports. So I really think kind of actually a lot of the things that you need to be good at school, good at university, good in your career, whatever that might be, a lot of the same aspects also apply to Goalball and elite sport.
Yeah, definitely. We've just got a question from Steve, and he just said, what would the biggest sacrifice you've had to make in order to obviously pursue your career in elite Goalball?
I think it's missing people's weddings. People have a knack of putting weddings in the summer in the run up to major tournaments, and then you're sitting there and you're going, so I have this wedding and we have this competition in Sweden. And you look at it, and in the end, I always make the same decision and I always go to Goalball. I think I missed one tournament last year for going on holiday with my family, and everybody was shocked. And I was like, yeah, but it's the only weekend my whole family can make, and it's my dad's birthday. And like, this was an intermediate tournament, but everybody was shocked that I wasn't there. Because I think for a very long time, I've always just prioritized Goalball. So it's missing friends events. I think that has been the choice. There was somebody, I can't remember who it was, but he used this analogy at a sports talk I went to. And he said, as an elite athlete, you make choices. Like you're not making a sacrifice, but you're actually making a choice. And I think that is very true. You need to look at it like that if I want to be the best goalballer I can be, I make the choice to attend that training or that competition, which then means I also have to make the choice that I can't go to that person's wedding, but it's a choice, not a sacrifice.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's, if we move on a little bit, to be fair, when we were talking about the science stuff and you were saying about everyone having an answer, I wanted to say, would that be a point for the lighter points? Would that be included? But yeah, no, I think it's like I say, it's a big challenge fitting obviously work, hobbies, and then sporting. Obviously in normal times.
And I think I'm really lucky because I have a lot of really amazing friends, and my friends got very used to me saying post South Korea, post America, post Germany. There would always be that run up to the major, and it would just be like the 3-4 weeks after the majors, I catch up with all of you. But until then, I'm sorry, I will be unavailable for birthdays, whatever parties there are. And they've all dealt with it really well, and they're still friends with me, which is nice.
Yeah, no, it's good. And they, like I say, it's a really big, it's a choice, and that's the one that, like I said, with what you've done so far, we've not even got to current day yet, and you know what I mean. It's that them big choices. So let's jump back, not into goalball, but let's talk about lockdown. So lockdown 2020, I think is a year that we will all forget. But I think from me personally, and obviously with the work you've done, it's a big thank you from us all. Obviously with what, like, working through lockdown, and like, I don't know if we can, it is like, how have you found working through lockdown? Like, how have you found it? What's been your challenges?
I think in a really odd way, it was really nice to go to work every day, because actually I was allowed to socialize. I was seeing lots of really nice people every day. And I was really lucky. I was working on the children's cancer ward at the time, which I know to a lot of people would sound like a horrible place, but actually it's a real privilege to be able to work there. And the team were incredible, the nurses, the doctors. You know, actually, if you see day to day what some of these children, their families are going through, and actually in a way, it makes you realize, oh, well, the fact that I can't go out for dinner doesn't really matter. And it was a really nice thing to be able to go to work. Don't get me wrong. There were the really rough bits. There was families being separated. It is not nice, in particular under very difficult circumstances. There was initially just not understanding COVID. We didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know whether actually would we have to stop doing children's cancer services because there were going to be no beds in the hospital. So I think that uncertainty, and I'm generally somebody who doesn't like uncertainty, so I found that really tough, not knowing what was going to happen. But actually going to work was a real privilege. And I think it just reminded me why I am a doctor. Like, I really do like what I do. I love it, actually. So it was nice to go to work. I had a good time mostly.
No, good. And so being in work, and all the work that you've obviously had to do during lockdown, two things. How did that adapt training? So obviously, how did that make training different? And also, what nutrition stuff? We know that you like your packed lunches. Did you have to do anything different? Obviously, because you're not playing, you're not able to get to the gym. Did you do anything different?
So I found training really hard. I like to have my timetable. I like to pre-book a session in the gym. I know exactly when I will be where. I have a couple of great people at the university gym who are still supporting me, even though I've stopped being a student, for one-to-one sessions. And I actually I really enjoy training there, and I really enjoy training with those people. And it makes it's a big positive. And I think also, like, quite often when you've had a tough day at work, I would go to the gym and I would really get rid of all that energy and, I don't know, have time to debrief in my head and calm down about everything else, and would come home psychologically in a lot better place. And so I think during lockdown, the fact that I couldn't go to the gym, that was actually really difficult. I'm not the best person at training at home. Like, for me, home is relaxation, it's cooking, it's friends time. Like, it's not like the right compartment in my head for training. So I find it really difficult. I got used to a routine. I think also I knew that some of the other GB girls obviously suddenly found themselves with a lot of time. So suddenly some people were training 20 hours a week, and I was like, no, wait a second, I don't have that time. And actually it was really good because I think the support I got was fantastic, where everybody said, look, you have to go to work in the middle of a pandemic. Like, just relax. Don't put too much pressure on yourself with regards to training. But yeah, I find it really difficult.
No.
Oh, and you asked about food. I think I'm really lucky that my body is quite good at telling me when to eat and when not to eat. So I don't think I really consciously changed that much. But when I then sort of looking back at it, when I'm training a lot, I would usually have 4, if not 5 meals a day. And suddenly I was just eating like a normal person would, 3 meals a day. So I think kind of almost subconsciously my body knew to cut down on the food, even though I'm a big foodie. So that was, yeah, I do like my food.
Right, let's jump back on. I'm a bit worried, conscious of time.
Sorry, yeah, I do talk about
No, it's fine. No, it's fine. Not a problem. So let's jump back on the train, as I call it, and go straight into 2018. So kind of preparations for 2018 was kind of really big around the fact that obviously people within the team, people probably were retiring and starting that progression of change. How did you find that? How did your role within the team change? And did it make you do anything different as a player?
Yeah, so I guess it started with the Europeans in Finland in 2017 when both Laura and Anna retired. And that suddenly meant that only Georgie from the starting lineup was left. And it meant taking a lot of responsibility. Like I knew that if we wanted to qualify for Tokyo, I would need to become the best player I could be, which I think really focused my training. It meant I knew exactly what I needed to achieve. Like, I just needed to get better. I needed to develop a really good bounce shot. I needed to, get better at defending with my hands in center. It was the various things that I knew. Some of it was tough. Anna is a really close friend of mine. I really miss having her at Goalball. I didn't even realize that probably until 2020, until I had the time to reflect during lockdown. She had a really big influence on me. She had a huge amount of experience, and I would just normally feed off all of that experience and knowledge. And suddenly, instead of me feeding off somebody else, I had to kind of pass on experience and knowledge, and I had to take much more of a leadership role within the team, which changes dynamics, changes your role, gives you a lot more responsibility. And on one hand, it's exciting. Like, I love to play goalball. And on the other hand, it's a bit terrifying. You're like, oh, wait a second. You might rely on me to play the full 24 minutes of that game. So I really don't have a chance to make an error because I'm really going to have to be on court. So kind of like you're always torn between those, I think.
Yeah.
So 2018 was really a big development year in terms of that, because 2019 was going to be really busy.
Well, we on that little train journey, we slowly pull into the 2019 train station, and I think this probably from being at Goalball UK was from looking on outside into the GB and obviously with Aaron and Becky that's probably one of the busiest years I've ever seen within an elite sport, of how many different competitions you've been to. Now,
yeah,
and I think trying to remember the tournaments, which is another one. So I've got down as Pajulati, Turkey, Malmo, USA ×2, and Germany. Is that correct?
I think there was a Madrid one as well in September 2019.
Yeah.
And there was one in Lithuania.
So I've got that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tournaments within the space of 1 year.
Oh, well, less than that, because really it was within 10 months. Yeah, so we were away competing every month. Yeah. It was busy.
How was that?
It was really busy. Like, on the one hand, I absolutely loved it. Like, that's why I play goalball. On the other hand, I certainly remember the month of May. I was either at work, at GB or club training, or competing, all but I think 1 or 2 days. And in order for me to get enough leave to be able to go to the US, I had to work the night shifts running up to it. So I worked nights until Thursday morning, went home and slept for a few hours, took the train to Heathrow, slept for a few hours in the airport hotel, and then got up early in the morning to fly to the US for Paralympic qualifiers, which, in retrospect, better not be repeated, because I think most of that flight, I was just so close to tears from just being exhausted, because I'd had that sort of 6 months running up to that, which were just insane. But on the other hand, it was great. I learned so much as a player. I developed so much in terms of like the skills. I got my first long ball. I'd been trying for years, and suddenly I got like multiple in a tournament and was like, oh, I need to get rid of those now. And yeah, I just learned a huge amount, really.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, and I can imagine it's so kind of, obviously, did you find, obviously you were saying there around the challenges, and what was it like not seeing family, friends and socialising? How much of an impact did that have?
I think you really get to know your goalball family really well. So they are good friends. The team are good friends, and that is really important. So I think I enjoyed spending the time with them. And also I was lucky that I was working with colleagues who I really liked. That always helps. But yeah, I didn't think I saw much of my family during that year. And actually until November 2019, when we went on a family holiday, I think in the meantime, they'd sort of come to catch up with me. They came to the Europeans for a few days, or they would come, to Cambridge for a long weekend, because it was the only time Sarah would have.
Yeah.
It was busy, but as I said, like, my friends are really nice and have put up with that for a very long time, and just accept that, they kind of have to arrange themselves around my timetable. It can't really be the other way around.
Yeah. So if we finish it, let's finish it at Germany, which was October 2019, which is obviously the Euro is. What was it like preparation-wise? Obviously, I think from what we just said there, what was it like around? Obviously, you've had a full 8-9 months of constant goalball work. What was it like for that final major tournament? How were preparations, and obviously talk us through what it was like in Germany at the games.
So I think for me personally, I was probably too tired by that point. I found going into Germany quite difficult. I think we did extremely well. And the irony is it's one of the few competitions I can remember where I am very disappointed with myself, yet amazed at the team. So for those of you who don't know, we finished in 4th place, but we only lost out by 1 goal on getting a guaranteed spot for Tokyo in the semi-final. So it was all really, really tight. Yeah, it had its ups and downs for me. I think that the sort of the high of beating Russia 6-2 and then losing to Israel 4-3 the next day, there was a lot of emotions, let's be honest. Yeah, it was a weird tournament to end on, because, as I say, there was just so much up and down involved in it.
Yeah,
but in the end, I think one of the things I will never forget is my parents came to watch, and we watched the final, and Faye Dale was sitting next to me, and she said, "Oh, Sarah, your mother is no good with nerves." And I go, "Well, what do you mean?" She's like, "She had to leave the hall during the quarterfinal. And I go, what do you mean? She's like, she got so scared when you went up 1-0 that you might actually win the quarterfinal that she walked out. And apparently she spent the rest of the game outside the hall, once in a while popping her head in, checking the score, and then walking back out again because she was more nervous than I was, which was kind of sweet.
Oh, that's brilliant. And to be fair, I think my big memory, and it's obviously me and Catherine, we were sat in a fast food chain restaurant. Let's put it that way. And we were sat hugging around an iPad, trying to get onto some free Wi-Fi, having delivered some club taster session, and basically celebrating every goal that went in during the day, and sat there literally. And I bet people didn't know what they were thinking. Who are them two people in Goalball UK? In Goalball UK kit, what they're doing, what they're cheering for. But yeah, that's my personal memory of it.
And I think that game also, it was a real work of teamwork. There was a lot of coaching strategy that went into that game. There was a lot of preparation. There had to be some very detailed tactics, and they worked out perfectly. And so I think that teamwork in preparing for that was just amazing. And we tried it out slightly a few weeks earlier in Spain where we played them. And I think we lost in the end something like 9-7, but we'd gone up to that against them in the first couple of shots. And I think that it was a real teamwork, team, not just the people on court, but the whole wider team figuring out how we were going to beat Russia. And it worked beautifully.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a well executed plan.
Good plan as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think onto the final train stop of this tour would be 2020, and obviously such a strange year like we just picked up on before, and so we've gone from 10 months of goalball work, seeing a bit of family, a little holiday somewhere, and then back into goalball and work, to completely doing nothing apart from working. But so how not playing goalball? How did you cope, or what? How was the change?
I really missed it. I think, especially during the first lockdown, it made me realize what I love so much. So I spent, just before lockdown came, I spent, I think, 10 days where I trained for 9 out of the 10 days. I went down to Hereford. We had an intermediate finals. All of this stuff was kind of happening in quite quick succession. And I was having a really great time. I was loving it. And I think to go from that to just complete withdrawal was really tough. I think I just realized how much I really enjoy playing goalball. I actually quite enjoy the training. I quite like going to the gym. I like lifting weights. I know it sounds odd. Not many girls do, but I love it. Beating yourself. It's more about improving yourself. It's not competition against others, but it's always you're trying to improve every time. Not being able to see all the other goalballers. And I think one of the things that really kept me sane was our Cambridge club. We've done weekly socials every single week on Zoom since the beginning of lockdown. We've had Disney movie nights. We've done all sorts of different things together. And they're just a fantastic bunch of people, as well as the GB ladies, of course. But kind of almost keeping me sane. But yeah, I really missed it. And it was so good to be back playing. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, I can imagine. And I think just we'll quickly round off before we open it up. I know we've got a couple of questions that have come in. I've just got two final questions, two key questions. So the first one is, what out of the 8 years, if we've got 8 years of playing, what would your best moment be so far in goalball? And does this count?
That's really tough.
And would this class as a lighter point if you can't answer?
I think I can answer, but there's a few different points. I think a particular highlight is looking back at 2019. When we were in Fort Wayne, Indiana, at the Paralympic qualifiers, we played Sweden in our fifth grade first playoff game. And basically, if we lost it, no, Finland. If we lost it, we knew we wouldn't go to Tokyo. If we won it, we knew we had a chance. And we'd had to go all the way to golden goal. We finished the game 4-4 in full time. I was really happy I scored my penalty. But then Mimi walks on court, and I don't think she even knew, but she stopped the penalty, which meant we'd won. And I don't think I've ever screamed so loudly in my life.
Yeah,
I do remember. It had been such a tight game, and we had to go through the whole 6 minutes of golden goal. But actually, we were 4-4 from about, I think, like 16 minutes into the game. Nobody scored for like most of the second half and for golden goal. And then, Mimi just didn't, I don't think she even knew what was going on exactly. She just went on court and defended that penalty in her style, the way she does. And that was just amazing. And then I think...
Go on, sorry.
I was going to say the other big one was winning the Eurobees back in 2016, when we just won every single game. I think we mercied most of our games. We just went through it in style and then finished, had got our gold medal. And it's nice standing on top of the podium with a gold medal, you have to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And like you say, two really good moments. And I'm sure plenty more that you could probably think about. And then the final one, just before we head out for questions, is the person that's inspired you the most to play goalball.
I think it has to be Anna Tipton. She would hate it if I said this, I think. But I think I just, she's somebody who also, she works as a physio, was working full time, still managed to do GB stuff, had a husband, did all of these things at the same time. I think she also taught me quite a bit about, how your faith and goalball work really well together, and, being a Christian in sport. And about that, we had lots of really great late night chats. So I think Anna is a real, she's got the right work ethic. I think she also, I loved about it the way that she scored goals. She was never the most powerful, but she just figured out the game and she knew exactly what needed to be done. And then she would just go and pick up the ball and score that goal when it mattered. And I just really like that. So yeah, I'm lucky to have her as a friend.
Absolutely, definitely. And I think just before we hand over to see what people have been asking in the chat box, is just a big thank you, really, Sarah, just for your time and such a great. Obviously, we've spent an hour talking about a wide range of things, and I think we could have probably spent at least another hour talking about a lot of other things.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I say, just a big thank you from us at Goalball UK for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Catherine, have we got any questions from the floor?
We have indeed. A little bit disappointed that, a third highlight wasn't being interviewed by you tonight, Tom. I mean, I would have thought that would have gone straight to number one.
Well, yeah.
Maybe when she's asked in future.
Ask me next year.
Yeah. Right, so we've had lots of questions come through. Most of them, I think, have been picked up to a certain degree, but we'll just kind of whiz around some of them just to make sure that everyone gets the opportunity. So we will start with the Tabata Queen herself, Tracy from London Elephant. So, Trace, if you want to just come off mute and ask Sarah your question.
Hello.
Hello, Tracy.
Hi, darling. How are you?
Good, thank you. Always good to see you.
Oh, well, there you go. Okay, so I put down about fitness. Obviously, going from novice to intermediate, elite, GB, your fitness levels from 8 years ago must have dramatically changed. And also, have they dropped in the pandemic, or have you been able to maintain that fitness level?
Yes, I think I'm lucky that I'm naturally somebody who's got quite good endurance. So even before I started playing goalball more seriously, I was decently fit, I'd say. You know, I used to go to the gym a little bit, but I was actually just naturally, like, endurance comes easy to me. And then, yeah, it built ridiculously. But actually what built up more, I'd say, was my sense of balance. And I think a lot of visually impaired people can say that, especially if you're growing up visually impaired, most of our sense of balance isn't that great. And my dad commented how I could finally walk down the stairs without holding onto the handrail in panic because I could actually balance if I was off balance. Anyway, yeah, lockdown, my fitness levels definitely dropped. I did go out running. I've got a great guide runner who sort of, you know, wouldn't now shout at me now that we're no longer allowed to be tethered. But yeah, I'd say they definitely have dropped, and I'm trying to pick them up again. But I hope that actually, you know, as in when we're back to proper full-time training, they will come back really quickly again.
Yeah, cool. Because as Catherine said, Tabata Queen, I don't know where she got that from, honestly. I really don't. But I too do love getting in the gym, doing the weights and everything. Any tips on how one would so I'm a strong defender, but and I've got quick responses, but as we all know, my shots aren't that powerful. That's what I need to do. So any tips on how I can progress?
So I think a lot about shot power is your whole body moving in synchrony. And it's because actually, like some of the big blokes, they can get away with taking all the power out of their arms. Most of us ladies will never get away with that. So actually it comes down a lot more to being able to put, you know, the strength you've got in your legs through good, strong core into your arms. So I've done a lot of the more sort of power movement stuff, actually quite a lot of bit of jumping, which also requires you to balance, but actually really it gets that idea into your legs. You know, actually I need to use, like, in order for me to shoot as quick as I can, I need to really be connected from my legs all the way into my hand. Because in the end, as a lady, that's the only way I'm going to get power into that shot, because I'm not built big enough that I can just rely on just my upper body. Okay. So I've done quite a few bits of like jumping things.
Skipping?
Yeah, skipping, not like more like even like, you know, kind of moderately terrifying, and used to hate my coach for it, but jumping onto boxes where you really have to challenge yourself. Like, but if you go for a soft box, then it's less terrifying. Because if you miss it, it's not so problematic. But it's like, it's that idea of like, or jumping as high as you can, or then, you know, jumping as far as you can. So it's that really that using your whole body. Skipping is much more quick, but actually rather it's like fewer big movements rather than lots of tiny ones.
Right, but yeah. We'll engage that then into my training regime. Thank you very much, Sarah.
Thank you, Tracy.
And thank you again. You're wonderful. I love you.
Oh, love you too.
Yeah, Tracy.
You're my inspiration, Sarah.
Next up then, Mr. Cambridge Dons himself, Warren. You'd got a question about kind of Sarah's school years, going way back when?
A long time ago.
Calling Warren. Is Warren with us?
I'm not quite sure. I've got his question here. I'm happy to read it out.
Yeah, go
for it. Would I be able to ask Sarah about her experience of playing sport as a child? What was Sarah's experience? Obviously, what was it like?
Yeah. School sports and I were not best friends. I think it's probably the most polite way of phrasing it. So my family, obviously, we lived really rurally. They now live in a little village. So like from a young age, my parents were always like, just being visually impaired didn't mean I was going to change anything. I learned how to ride a bike. I learned how to ski. We would go swimming on the lake, like all these sorts of outdoor things. They came really naturally to me, and I did lots of them with my family. School sports, unfortunately, were less good. I can't hit the ball to save my life. I have no three-dimensional vision. So, I try and hit the ball, but I might go to the left of it, to the right of it. Those people who've tried me see to catch stuff or throw stuff know exactly what I mean. And unfortunately, in particular in Germany, school sports are graded entirely on your ability. Not how hard you try, but how quick you are, how good you are at stuff. So I used to get D's in PE just because I couldn't play volleyball. And, looking back at it, I think those teachers need to learn something about inclusive sport. But it was the truth. So I think I'm lucky that because of the experience within my family, they kind of gave me a positive experience of sport, which meant that I wasn't completely demotivated with all of what was going on in school. And I think it's really made me quite passionate about going into schools as well. And I've been to a couple of primary schools and just shared with the teachers, but also with the children about, making sport inclusive, because I think it will make a huge difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Catherine, have we got any more?
We've got a couple. So Steve asked about the biggest sacrifice. He also asked about rituals. So before a tournament, before you go on court, is there anything there?
I'm not a superstitious person. I'm not at all. We have the way we do warm up, but apart from that, I don't really have specific things the way I do them. Well, I say that. I like to run through all the tactics again one last time with Becky, because Aaron is usually busy. So I pick Becky and I go, right, just remind myself of all the different exact tactics. And that's what I really like to do. But I don't think, if that didn't happen, I probably wouldn't be so, I'm not really superstitious. So, yeah.
Okay. And I think we've probably answered this one, but we'll just give Sam a chance to say, if not. She was asking about juggling work and goalball. Is there anything more to add there, Sam?
No, not really. I really like the fact that she said that she's very organised. I think with somebody who has such a busy timetable, being organised is the best way to cope with everything and not feeling overwhelmed. So yeah, that was just all I had to ask. But yeah, it's really, I look up to you in the fact that you have so much on and you're able to do as much as you can. So yeah, that's all.
Brilliant. Thanks,
Thank
Sam.
you.
And there was a question from Bobby Jack, but I think he might be a little bit Zoom shy, so I'll ask it on his behalf. Again, he asked about working for the NHS, which I think we've covered, and then just asked about diet as well. So you've mentioned the infamous big lunchbox now, but maybe what's probably your pre-tournament go-to meal, and maybe what do you enjoy post-tournament? I know the other week that I found a shared passion with Joe Roper for our love of Ben and Jerry's. So what's your little treat for post-tournament, and how do you behave before tournaments?
I totally love ice cream, but it's probably not my go-to after tournament. Pre-tournament, I think Friday night is quite often pasta bake night. It's something I put lots of vegetables and maybe some chicken and lots of different things into, and it's really nice and it's comforting and warm and yummy. Post tournaments, if we come back from a majors, I usually order a takeaway pizza. I just love all the grease when I come back, and it's doesn't last very long. It's a day or two, and then I'm now I'll go back to my my fish and my vegetables and my rice. But briefly, I will be all up for all of the grease.
That's a normal diet in the Dobson household. Once a week as a minimum. Brilliant. Sorry, I jumped in there, Catherine.
Yeah, I was intrigued earlier when Sarah mentioned fruit and veg, and you kind of acknowledged that, Tom, because I didn't think that was normally in your lunchbox. So, I think just looking down the list, I think most things have probably been covered. So we'll just quickly say, if anyone's got anything to say, please speak now or forever hold your peace. So just have a bit of free for all if anyone has got anything else pressing.
Sarah, on the fluid side of your diets, pre and post tournaments, what do you normally?
I need to improve, is the honest answer. I try really hard to drink enough, but I am not the best drinker. I try to make sure that I've got, like, for example, tea bags with me. I'm a big fan of herbal teas, so I need to have my own tea with me because otherwise I don't drink enough. I do use some of those salt tablets. I am decently sweaty, if not the most sweaty person, but yeah, I think it's just something always to kind of be really conscious of and always think about that, because yeah, I'm not good enough. I'm still working on that one, I'm afraid.
And what about after, though?
Afterwards, afterwards somehow is easy. I just have a big water bottle and then drown it. The big problem often is, and I think lots of you will appreciate that, is that we travel after the end of a tournament.
Yeah.
And you never know what that toilet on that train will look like. And I think that is actually a big hindrance. That's part of the reason I'm not as good as I should be.
Cool. So when you get home with your greasy pizza, what's your tipple?
Just a massive big glass of squash, probably.
Oh God, she's so boring, isn't she, Catherine?
I'm not a big alcohol drinker, to be fair. Like even in lockdown, even when there isn't Goalball, it's not my thing.
So just to take from that, Tracy, it's water post tournament, not cider. Okay.
Yeah, all right, Catherine.
You allowed some squash.
Will that help me get on the GB squad?
Maybe, yes.
It won't hinder you, put it that way. So right, Tom, I think we're covered there.
Excellent. Yeah, like I say, massive thank you to everyone for coming on tonight. I think it's been such a great, obviously, hour and a bit. I think, like I say, we could have gone on for another hour easy to talk about everything and anything. And yeah, like I say, we're hopeful that we'll try and do another one over the next couple of weeks, months. So yeah, so keep a lookout over Goalball UK social media, and yeah, like I say, massive thanks again to Sarah, and take care, and we'll see you all soon.